Hello everyone, this is Joe Fortin. Welcome back to the channel. I am here today with a guest, and this is my friend Dan. And Dan and I are gonna just have a discussion about current events. We're gonna talk a little bit about the dating scene, men and women, and we're probably gonna bring up a few different topics. Dan, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I've known Joe for a couple years. We have different conversations. He and I agree on a lot of things, but disagree on a lot of things. And we both have pretty good discussions and can debate each other and understand where each other's coming from without hating each other. So it's kind of rare to find nowadays. So that's one thing I do appreciate about this guy. So
Likewise.
Yep.
Likewise.
And as far as I go, I did 10 years in the military as a civil engineer. Now I'm doing something totally different. I help people get back to work. Yeah, that's about it. I have a very wide variety of interests, and so.
Yeah, I think one thing me and Dan have in common is we're both kind of techies.
Mm-hmm.
I've been out of the game for a little while, but
yeah, I'm a huge nerd.
Yeah, likewise. But you brought up something that I think it would be a good idea to just discuss briefly. And that's the topic of being able to have civil discourse, being able to have a debate,
Yep.
being able to discuss issues and maybe have disagreements, but still walk away being friends and understanding that the goal ultimately is our collective betterment and the collective good. We might see it differently, but we're trying to get to the same place.
Yep.
And I think that that's often the case in society at large, is that, people disagree on how to get there, but we're all trying to make the world better.
Yep.
For the most part. I think most people, that's really what they're seeking to do.
Most humans are inherently good. And like you said, I think we're all trying to solve issues. It's just, we all might get there at a certain pace or a different pace or by a different way. So
right. I think there's also
but we're not going to solve it if we can't talk about it.
Exactly. I want to bring up archetypes in a second. But we see, especially like on social media, and I know that you don't use social media, and I
got off social media 6 years ago at least, and never looked back. It's been crazy how much more time I've had, and how many fewer issues I've run into not clashing with people over social media. And I've probably kept more friends that way.
I've probably lost quite a few friends that way.
It happens, man, because not everyone can be objective about things. So.
Right. I've talked about this at length on my channel as well, and I've basically completely discontinued using social media except for promoting my videos and being an unrelenting troll, which I do. And those of you who are on my Facebook probably know that.
Well, you're kind of in a unique situation too, because you kind of have to be on social media to do what you do.
Yeah.
So it's like a necessary evil for you.
Yeah, it is. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I really don't. If I had it my way and I didn't have to use this technology to do what I do, I probably wouldn't be on it at all.
Yeah.
Because I used to sit there and scroll on Facebook, and I would just be triggered all day, and just
All these morons.
Yeah, and the thing is, the social dilemma brings up some interesting points about that, is that we're all in these echo chambers, everyone, and I'm not exempted from that.
Yeah.
And so it creates a situation where, you're seeing all these people with these opposing points of view constantly, and it's just, you can't avoid it. You're never going to break from it when you're on social media all day, and I don't think that that's overly healthy. Like the ability to have a conversation, have a disagreement, and walk away from it is, I think, also necessary.
Or the flip side, that 95% of the time you never see anyone with any opposing views, so you think that everyone thinks that way.
Right.
Like, no, they don't.
Yeah.
You're minority. Sorry.
Well, I also think there's an issue with, the level of depravity that people will sink to on social media in terms of the things that they will say to other people, the ways that they will behave. just attacking people viciously in a way that they would never do to their faces.
Yep.
And I think that it's pretty toxic and unhealthy. So, I think there's just a lot of elements to it. On the flip side, we've obviously been given access to a lot of information that we wouldn't otherwise have. So, there's always like a dark and a light side to these things.
Yeah, I mean, the downside of social media is you don't get the tone, too. Like you and I sitting here talking, there's tone of voice.
Yes.
And if I just text you something over social media, you don't get that. So there's no nuance. It's, however, your perception of what I'm saying in black and white words. And human language is really inadequate for the stuff that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So
I've been speaking about that a little bit, the babble.
Yep.
But yeah, that's it's a very good point. It's people often project how they would say a statement onto what someone else is saying. So I might be stating something simply as a fact, and this has happened to me many times where I'm a little blunt, and I will just state my opinion and make a point.
Yeah.
And people will take it as I'm attacking them, and it's not the case.
Right.
The reason for me to have this discussion and to have a debate is to arrive at the truth, not to attack you, not for me to be better, not for any of those reasons. We're having this discussion to arrive at the truth.
Yep.
What is the truth? How can we uncover the truth? And I think that's something that needs to be taught in schools. Honestly, that's just not taught. Logic, epistemology, the ability to have civil discourse without it, getting down to that level.
Well, sometimes you want to push people in a certain direction to see what the reaction is or what they actually think versus, are they just regurgitating something that they've heard their friends and other people in the media say, or is this their own thoughts? And trying to peel all of that back. Sometimes you do have to push a little bit, but people need to not take it personally. It's not about them.
Yeah.
So.
One of the things, and I think that this might be a good segue into speaking about like men's issues that I've talked about is as men, with testosterone, right?
Yep.
Guys sometimes need a slap in the face.
Yep.
And literally, I think, to be honest.
Sometimes guys need to get their ass beat.
Yeah,
Just to know where they stand.
Do.
Yep.
And, a lot of people won't, think that that's, a good thing to say or a good philosophy, but I just think it's literally true.
Yep.
And
not all guys. Not all guys.
That's true. That's true, because not all guys are stubborn enough to need that. Right. However, this guy, I needed to get my ass kicked a few times, quite a few times.
Yep.
But, I mean...
Well, the reason I say not all guys is because, again, whenever we're talking about gender, male and female, I think we have to throw the disclaimer out there all the time that if I say men or women, I'm talking about the majority under the first and third quartile under the bell curve, not, all men and all women.
Right.
But it's insane to me that people still, like, in their head, they're like, all men, all women, rah!
Right,
like, oh my God. I was like, you're slowing us down.
Right, yeah, with the sweeping generalizations.
We're never going to solve it.
Yeah, so moving forward within this conversation, when we speak about men and women, we're talking about your typical heterosexual male and your typical heterosexual woman.
Yep.
We're not going into transgender issues or any of the what would you call it, like an outlier?
Not even outliers, just and when we're talking about heterosexual, I mean, everyone's on a spectrum, so even using the label heterosexual is tough. Like, we'll use the term mostly heterosexual male and mostly heterosexual female, I guess.
Right.
Because everything's so diverse now that, which is great. I mean, it always has been. It's just that now people are becoming more aware of the diversity that's out there. So, and I think that's a big problem for people is it's uncomfortable to think along the lines of diversity because people want that comfort of knowing that they're right or wrong or what have you, and they want that black and white, this is the way I live and that's it and I'm done. Right. And that's one thing religion gives you, which is really comforting for a lot of people, which is fine, but it has some bad side effects.
Right. So, I'm just going to give full disclosure here and give my point of view on this.
Yeah.
I see the spectrum so to speak, as you've mentioned, as somewhat of a distortion. And I've talked about this on my channel. I see it as a result of trauma and environmental factors and things of that nature. But, I do acknowledge that it does exist in the way that you're saying.
Yep.
The spectrum, it does exist that way.
And you can't discount trauma. I mean, there are situations where trauma has definitely molded people into who they are.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that it is, a bit unreasonable to, to expect someone to change themselves in that regard.
Right.
Or to seek to control people in that regard, which is what I think religion has done with like homosexuality, for example, with radical Christians, right? Yeah. And I think that, a lot of people might take my points of view and muddle it and confuse it with that, and it's not the case.
Right.
I do take a sort of, I guess I would say, left-brained perspective in my own, with my own data and my own viewpoint on it. I take sort of a logical point of view with it, and I do view some of these things as being a result of trauma, and therefore maybe not a reflection of being in a state of perfect health. But I also understand that nobody here is perfect. I'm not perfect. I've had my own issues. I've had a lot of them.
And I suspect what you're doing more is trying to get people to explore that route. Is it trauma that is causing XYZ in your life? Is it something that you can work on or improve, or is it you as a human? And
right.
That's that nature versus nurture thing that comes into play. So,
and I think a lot of times what people tend to do is self-identify with something like being either heterosexual or homosexual, right?
Sure.
And my
people
point,
want to belong to something.
Exactly. My perspective on that is that you don't necessarily have to make that your identity.
Right.
That can be just something that you choose to do, right? I don't think it necessarily defines your worth as a human being.
Right.
And so I think that, when you bring up these arguments, people tend to take it personally because they've self-identified with their position. I think that it doesn't have to be that way. And another example that I'd like to point out, right? There's a consistent theme in the autism community, right? And this is like one of those things that's like, it's hard to say because the cultural paradigm is not it's not politically correct, right? But in my exploration of Heilkunst, which is the system of holistic medicine that I've been using, Heilkunst is one of the very few systems of holistic medicine that has seen significant strides in healing the conditions that are associated with autism, right?
What do you mean by conditions?
The symptom picture, right?
Okay.
The things that people might have issues with, like communication issues, behavioral issues, health issues, those sorts of things, right?
So things that people on the spectrum have issues with that they acknowledge are issues for them,
right?
That they want to change.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Things that could be considered a disability, right? It's something that prevents them from being able to be, fully functioning autonomous human beings that are not dependent, right?
Sure.
And one of the.
But I think it's important to distinguish that it's something that they themselves have defined for themselves as being issues or disabilities that they want to overcome versus people looking from the outside and saying, well, that's different, therefore it must be solved.
I agree, and I think that comes back to control. I'm somewhat philosophically an anarchist. I don't believe in controlling other people, but I do believe in giving people the facts and the knowledge, and presenting people with the idea that hey, if you're having issues communicating,
Yep.
there is a solution for this. Now it's up to you to choose whether or not you want to engage in that. If you don't want to, and you don't see your condition as something that is lacking or flawed, and you don't choose to go that path, more power to you.
Yeah.
But I think that.
Well, and I think that's healthy. Is that if you, like, here's a solution that may work for you. If you don't want to try that, that's also fine. And I think that, but yeah, I can see where you're trying to give people more options, which makes sense to me. And that's actually helpful, could be helpful for people involved. So, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. And it's difficult because my personality, I have a tendency to, you know, I'm a Sagittarius. I tend to be very blunt and like kind of in people's faces and, you know, pointing things out sometimes. And, you know, sometimes I don't always know my place, but you know, I'm working on it. I'm working on my stuff too.
I'm an Aquarius, so I just bring the party and bulldoze my way through life. It's fun.
But you know, what I was going to bring up with the autism issue is that one of the themes that's been seen over and over and over within the Holocaust community in helping children with autism is that you will often see parents that almost have like an unconscious need for the child to remain dependent, and therefore will sometimes undermine that child's ability to heal. In fact, defending, you know, the condition of the child rather than acknowledging that it could be rectified, that it, you know, that it's a problem that could be. You know,
I think that's something that's as basic as, you know, when people reach 18 and they are old enough to leave the house and the parents don't want them to leave. I think that's, you know, parents sometimes, and I can't speak really to this because I'm not a parent and I never will be.
Nor I. Well, I don't know if I never will be.
Well, vasectomy at 23, so probably will never be. But anyways, yeah, I think this is something, I remember distinctly my parents having a conversation about this because they were not ready to let my brothers and sisters go at 18 per se, right? But they did, and you know, obviously they're 18, they can make their own decisions and do what they want to do, but they had to reach that decision between themselves. So I think that may be something that parents struggle with in general, whether or not your child has a disability. And it could also be as basic as you as a parent wanting to protect your child from the world, let's say.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I could see that being a thing, yeah.
Totally. I actually just mentioned this in one of my videos. I think that there's a degree of that that's healthy, but there is a degree of that where it actually becomes toxic.
Sure.
And in defining, you know, we've spent a lot of time defining toxic masculine energy, right?
I hate that term.
Well,
we do.
You know, I think that it's sometimes accurate. You know, I think that there's a polarity between, well, both what you would consider like beta energy and the toxic masculine energy, but there's also there are
behaviors that are poisonous.
Sure.
That, you know, some men do.
Exactly. But there's also the masculine in his fullness, right? Who is a strong, you know, kind of little dominant leader, right?
Sometimes you got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah, and everybody's going to have a little bit of polarity in them.
Yeah.
But what was the? I was on a track and I lost it.
You were talking about persons with autism and then,
I was talking about
getting away from the home.
We've spent a lot of time defining like toxic masculine energy, right? And the helicopter parent thing, where it's like they don't want their child to go out and do anything because, you know, it might be dangerous, right? Or you know, they want to control every aspect of their lives to protect them from life. You know, that would be what I would define as more of like a toxic feminine energy. It's like mothers that kind of create codependency in their children and make them dependent on them to protect them, sometimes from the father, but also from the world. And, you know, they don't allow them to really ever learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. And it can be something that's taught.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that's.
And you're saying toxic feminine because it's more of a mothering thing that they're doing?
Yeah, it's something that you're typically going to see in a feminine archetype more.
Okay.
You know, like if you look at the dynamic between a father and mother, you know, like a good example is, you know, you look at a child who's going through an addiction issue, right? Most of the time, if there's an enabling parent, it's usually the mother.
Yeah, stereotypically.
It's usually the mother because she feels bad for the kid and, you know, whatever. And the father's usually like, fucking let him go to jail, you know. And
you made your bed, sleep in it.
that's right, you know. And you need that, you do need that polarity. That's why, the family unit's important. That's why it's important to have a masculine and a feminine balanced figure in your life.
Sure.
You need both of those polarities there.
Yep.
And, for men, what ends up happening a lot of times is that guys hate their fathers for being that way for a long time. And then they get a little older and they start to become men themselves. And the things that start coming out of their mouths, just like in Iron Man, where he's like, I sound just like my father.
Yep.
It's like that.
Yep.
You end up becoming a lot like your father. I mean, who else would you end up being like?
Right. And I think it's important to distinguish that male and female characteristic can also be found in non-quote-unquote heterosexual couples.
Sure.
Because I think I think what's more important than anything else is having at least two people to raise a child. Because if nothing else, man, you need a break. Like, I don't know how one person could raise a child and do a good job and work at the same time, like have a career. Like, I just can't. I have a career and I can't even have a dog because I'm gone for 10 hours a day. Like, that would not be fair to the dog.
Right.
Like, so I don't know even how I would begin to raise a child.
Right.
So,
yeah, we were just having a discussion about that exact topic, actually. But I agree with you 100%. And, the society's kind of been constructed to the point now where it's almost like impossible for people to have a single income family.
Yep.
Which I think we're in agreement on this. My intention moving forward, at some point I would like to have a family, I would like to have children, and I have mentioned many times that I would like the woman that I end up being with to be okay with being a stay-at-home mother until the kids are 7, 8 years old, and at that point, in accordance with what I believe in terms of how men become men. I think that the boys need to go with the men and go through tests, challenges, and trials and initiations and learn how to be men.
Sure.
And I think that masculine energy grows through that challenge, and I think that it's why, kind of like we were talking about earlier, sometimes men need people to get in their face and challenge them because that's how masculine energy grows. It has to overcome those challenges.
Yep. Well, and when it comes to men and aggression, like, this is something that I think Joe Rogan was talking about the other day, and it struck me, is that male aggression is needed, and it's a good thing, because otherwise the wolves are at the door, right?
Yes.
However, you have to learn how to integrate that into society. So if you're a male and you have an aggressive personality, right? You have to figure out that it's not a bad thing. You just have to figure out how to integrate yourself into society. And us as a society has to understand how to integrate something like that and use it in a healthy way. And that's something that I think in society we are lacking. We don't have a lot of outlets for men to use their aggression in a healthy way right now.
I couldn't agree more.
I mean, the labor jobs are going away. Everything's getting automated. Like, there's a lot of jobs that men that needed that outlet don't have anymore. And so what do you do with that? You can't just medicate that away. You can try, but something's going to blow up at some point, and it's not going to be good.
That energy has to express in some manner.
Yep.
Yep.
You can't just squash it. It'd be the same thing if we were trying to suppress female energy. Like,
right.
Us guys are smart enough not to even try to do that.
Yes.
If anything, we encourage it. Get it out there, please. Get it out there.
I was just saying in one of my videos the other day, I was like, I tend to be attracted to women who get angry at me. I was like, it actually turns me on a little bit.
You're so cute when you're angry. And they really get angry, and they just get cuter.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I did run into one female that was legitimately cute when she was angry. Like, her face would get all screwed up, and it was cute. And I was like, you don't understand. You are very adorable when you're angry.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not making fun of you. Like, you just are.
Yeah.
Like, let me show you a picture of yourself. Get angry. Did not end well.
Yeah.
But, it just is what it is, man.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a small example of, being tested by a woman, which
Oh, yes.
we're acutely
Couple
aware of.
tests. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tests.
Yeah. They're fun if you know how to handle them. They're not if you don't. But.
Yeah. Well, they're confusing if you don't, and I think that's a big problem for a lot of men is they don't understand what's going on. Because I mean, oftentimes when many females are doing this, they don't understand what's going on either. They're just doing it naturally.
Yep, it's biological.
Yep.
Biological.
Yep.
Totally.
And I think so much of this is biological, and we don't even look at that aspect. We just say it's X, Y, or Z, and then just try to dismiss it as toxic, and then I'm like, you're never gonna solve this stuff. Like, you're just making it worse. Stop it.
Right. Well, I think, there's so many things out there that are being spewed in the collective, about things, being supposedly social programming, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, for example, the idea of gender being a social construct, the idea of, what was the other one I was going to say?
Color could be a social construct.
Right.
Blue and pink.
The idea of beauty being a social construct, right? The idea that, men are only attracted to women who are fit in general being a social construct. And the other way around, too, right?
No, I would say men being attracted to women that are overweight and vice versa would be a social construct, because back in the day that meant that you were doing well and that you weren't starving. Right? Seriously.
Yeah.
Men being attracted to fit women and vice versa isn't a social construct. That is biology.
It's biology. Same thing with beauty and facial symmetry.
Yeah.
It's built into the construct here that has to do with, goes into the golden ratio and all these other things, right?
The more symmetric you are, the better genetics you probably have.
Oh, man.
Look at that correlation.
You shouldn't have said that.
It's not me. It's math. It's science. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that you're probably naturally attracted to those genetics. That's all it means.
Right, yeah.
What do you do with that counts? And that is what we haven't figured out yet, is we have these urges, we have these drives. What do you do with it? You have to acknowledge it's there first before you can do anything.
Right, and I think that's a major problem. One of the things that I was going to bring up a little earlier, and kind of missed a little bit of a segue into it, I'm going to bring it up anyway, was archetypes, right? And what you were talking about with aggression, right, could be in Jungian terms described as like shadow integration, right?
Okay.
So there's quite a few different directions I could take this in. I want to quote Jordan Peterson poorly, real quick. And
this should be good.
He said essentially, a good man is not not a weak man. A good man is not a man who's not dangerous. A good man is a man who's extremely dangerous but has it under control.
Yep. It is quoted poorly, but yes.
Yes, very poorly.
Yeah, he basically there was something else he said along those lines. It's basically the worst thing you can be as a human being is harmless, because that means that you will be completely taken advantage of.
Right, and that is the case here, and it's something that I've attempted to explain to many people in the New Age community. They've been kind of programmed with this idea that, if we just love everyone, everything will heal and work out. And it's like, well,
absolutely love everyone, but also be ready to kick some fucking ass if you need to.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that there's a distinction there as well. You can love someone and not tolerate their toxic behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can love someone at a distance.
I would argue that loving someone and not tolerating their toxic behavior is actually showing more love, because you're willing to take them aside and talk to them and find out where that behavior is coming from.
Yep.
And actually help them. Because if you didn't care, you would just not do anything.
Right.
You would walk away.
Right. I appreciate my friends that call me on my bullshit.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I get called out.
It's hard.
At least once a week. Yep.
Yeah, and that's healthy. That's good. You need that.
Yep.
But in terms of the archetypes, right? We were talking earlier about how, like you and me, right? We have different mixtures of different archetypes, right? And the tarot goes into this, and different fables and parables go into this as well, the different archetypes. You see the archetypes present in movies and things like that, right?
Sure.
And we're all like a mixture of different archetypes, right? And if you get into like astrology, right, that can kind of give you a glimpse into how much of different archetypes are operating within your psyche, right? And that's why it's termed astropsychology, right? But the purpose of bringing this up is that we have different points of view on things, right? And we disagree on some things, right?
Sure.
We're ultimately trying to get to, I think, collectively, a similar place, right?
Right.
But we have different ideas about how to get there. The thing about this is that that's necessary.
Yep.
We both have our functions. Very much like a good example is I just made a video about something called a heyoka. Are you familiar with the heyoka?
I'm not.
The heyoka is basically it's a Lakota tribe term, Native American, and the heyoka is known as the sacred clown, and they sort of operate backwards. But basically, what they're doing is similar to like a court jester. It's similar to like a comedian, right? They're sort of like mocking everyone around them to show them how they're being fools. Kind of like comedians do.
Yeah.
So they make jokes at other people's expense, and they're often very harsh, right? But that archetype serves a function, right? It brings awareness, it brings light to these different issues, right? In a way that's sort of like, it disrupts you. It's like a pattern interrupt to your psyche, right? And if you can laugh at yourself, right, it can make making some of these changes a little easier.
Sure.
That archetype serves a function. There's also there's room for the aggressive male, right, in balance. And what Jung would say. Excuse me. And I went through this myself, right? I used to be what you would term a nice guy. And for those of you watching, there's a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert A. Glover. That's a great book to read on this. What happens is this polarity between what you would see as your shadow and the nice version of you. So I would walk around being nice to everybody all the time. I couldn't stand up for myself, and I would get taken advantage of all the time. When I was younger, I got picked on a lot. I got bullied. I didn't know how to stand up for myself, right? And so what ended up happening was, because I had this idea that I had to be nice to everybody all the time, right? I didn't want to upset them, even if they hurt me horribly, right? I wouldn't do anything about it.
Yep, that's not good.
Exactly. What it did was it created essentially this other, almost like this other alter personality, right? Which I represented as my shadow, right? Oh, that's the side of me that gets angry. That's the side of me that hurts people. That's the side of me that, loses his temper and gets too aggressive. All the things that we've been told is not okay about being a man, right?
So you literally were not integrating your own personality into your overall.
That's right. And what would happen is, when I would get drunk, that would come out.
Sure.
And it would come out extremely imbalanced. And so I would get violent. I would start being extremely aggressive, extremely loud, doing crazy things, because that energy needed to go somewhere.
Okay.
And it was, the good thing was my release valve was still working. It was just somewhat dysfunctional. But the way that I actually achieved balance was by accepting that part of myself, realizing that it was there, learning how to use it in a balanced way, learning how to be assertive, learning how to say no to people, when they were doing things that, I didn't view as something that I wanted, or that, that was acceptable to me in terms of their treatment and behavior towards me.
Right.
And I dated, a lot of women that didn't treat me very well as a result of this.
Yep.
And, I dated a lot of women that, degraded me. And it's not to say I was perfect. There's always a polarity here. I had responsibility in these issues as well. And I learned something from each relationship that I was in. But, it created an unhealthy dynamic.
Yep. But you have to be a good person, not a nice person. A nice person is a doormat. A good person knows when to stand up for themselves, or stand up for other people and do what's right for the whole, the group, the good of the whole.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that means, saying and doing things that, might upset some people.
Yep. It might make you uncomfortable, but
right.
It is what it is.
Real briefly, I want to bring up something that I've been seeing recently.
Oh.
One of the things, I made a bitch of a strongly worded video the other day about weak, cowardly, dishonorable men. And one of the issues that I pointed out was this growing inability that people have to face conflict.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the reasons for this is cell phones, social media, right? So what I'm seeing with a lot of men is that rather than facing you when they have an issue with something that they need to break up, they will text you.
Yep.
And to me, this is just extremely weak, passive-aggressive behavior, and it is unmanly.
Yep.
And I really just think it needs to stop. I think people need to stop doing this. And I will tell people, when somebody texts me and they're in the next room, I walk out of the room and I'm like,
Yep. Yep.
talk to me to my face,
Yep.
even if it pisses me off.
Yeah,
Deal with it.
That's contributing to that whole. Who was it that said we're all alone together because we're so connected, but we're all alone?
Yeah.
Yeah, that contributes to it because again, that's why I'm glad you have an iPhone because I get to actually record my voice and talk to you, and then you can record your voice and talk back to me if we're not on the phone.
Yeah.
Versus texting because texting
great.
is so limited. Like
That's what we most often do,
Yeah.
honestly, as well. We send voice messages.
and then you get tone of voice.
Yep.
Maybe they should have that so it works over Android phones too. Maybe, I don't know, Apple?
I don't think it would be that hard to figure out.
It wouldn't be, but Apple keeps a tight grip on that thing. So
they just want to keep the competition going.
yeah, it's really annoying. They're literally inhibiting human interaction, but they don't see it that way. So
Yeah, I mean, we could go into like things I've talked about, like with the harmonic eighth sphere type of stuff. I don't know how much we've talked about that. Now, I do see that, sending voice messages is certainly a step in the right direction. My
Absolutely.
only concern is that you're still using technology to communicate rather than being face-to-face.
oh sure,
And so, even though it makes things better, it actually makes it so that you're more apt to use the technology, even if you have an issue with some of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes
So,
sense.
there's still like, it's like this. There's always this. Duality, this catch-22, it's always like, oh, this is great except for this, and this is great except for this, and
Yep.
it's just
well, it's all a
always that
balance.
way.
It's a balance, and then where are we going to draw the line? You have to draw a line at some point, but
Right.
then how do you improve and continue to improve? Because that's one thing I don't really see as constant improvement. Like we're not focused in that. We're just focused on rights and privileges, and no one has rights. We're all humans. Like I don't know. I'm going to get off on a tangent. So.
No one has rights. That's an interesting statement.
Yeah. No one really has rights, right? We're all human beings and we all interact with each other in society. But to focus on only rights, I think, is getting away from the crux of the issue. Like people have value as human beings. It's not it's not about rights. I think rights is oversimplifying everything. And I don't know if I have the words to describe what I'm trying to get to, but yeah.
So, I think in order to fully explore that topic, we would have to really get down to the nitty-gritty in terms of how you're defining rights.
Yes.
Do you want to go there, or you want to go somewhere else?
I don't think we have enough time to go there.
Okay.
But
all right. That's another thing too. I want to bring this up real briefly. In terms of having philosophical discussions and debates, I've brought this up a lot on my channel. A lot of the things that I discuss, right, are things that people just dismiss, right? They just dismiss it.
Yep.
Oh, that's crazy. That's nonsense. And Einstein, I believe, was quoted saying, contempt prior to investigation is the height of ignorance, right?
Yep.
In order to have a true debate, in order to engage in real science, right, which is arriving at an approximation of the truth, essentially, it requires a lot of time.
Yep.
And it requires, okay, we've defined this variable. Well, what is it? Well, we've got to spend, you've got to spend a year learning algebra in order to understand how to make that work correctly in order to understand the next step.
Yep.
Right? And it's building blocks on top of building blocks on top of building blocks. So you can't argue with something that you don't understand,
Right.
first of all.
And not to mention the discussion could take 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, and
Yeah.
not a lot of people have that time because we're all working 40 hours a week or more.
Right,
So-
right.
Back, not to interrupt you, but back to rights. Just to put it out there, because I don't want people to think that, I don't know. When it comes to rights, I think that you have to define a right as something that applies to every single human being on the planet.
Sure.
I think when you start assigning rights to different groups, that's where it becomes weird.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, I
Just to oversimplify what I was trying to say.
No, I agree with that. I think that, does actually create a lot of the polarity that we see and the infighting that we see, among people that, really could and potentially should be united, people
Right.
that, should be working towards a common goal, being pitted against each other because of the way that we're choosing to define certain things, Let me back up for a second on the...
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. The debate. Yeah, I think we pretty much covered it. It takes a long time to understand these issues to the degree where you're able to actually make an informed, decision about it. And there's a lot of things where, like I speak on my channel about topics that I'm well versed in, right? But I'll be the first one to tell you, if you bring up something right now that I don't understand or that I don't have any knowledge of, I'm just going to tell you, I'm ignorant. I don't know anything about that, and it's not my place to really give you an opinion on it because I haven't explored it.
Yep.
And I think that's
I'll
an
tell people
important
that
thing.
as well. I just don't have the knowledge to have an opinion about that at this point.
Right.
And I may or may not have time to look into it because
Right.
we all only have so much time.
Right.
So.
And I think that's that's an important thing to do in terms of delegating responsibility within society.
Yep.
We are a tribal species, and there are people with different archetypes, different roles.
Yep.
And there are people who are experts in certain fields, right? And so there's good reason to allow them, to essentially to be the authority in that regard. Doesn't mean they're beyond scrutiny, and it doesn't mean that they're beyond reproach.
I was going to say, I do have a problem with tribalism in general just because it leads to war, period. But
I've never heard that point of view.
yeah, it just does, man. Because if you think about it, like different tribes, maybe a modern definition could be less warlike, but at the end of the day, if you have tribalism, it's going to eventually lead to conflict and violence and war. I think we need to start looking at everything as a human race and a global species, not getting into globalism because it's a whole other topic. And that's the other thing too, like people have stolen so much language and labeled everything, and it's just really hard to navigate for the good of humanity now without stepping on landmines everywhere.
Right.
So.
Well, you kind of touched on an interesting subject area. So we've got this, obviously we've got this globalist agenda, right? And we've got the New World Order, and we've got, Agenda 21 and all these different things, right?
Sure.
And the control structure that's trying to be, initiated, right? And the language that they're using is making it sound like, oh, this is a way for us to have world peace and prosperity, when in reality it's actually a few people controlling everything once again. And the problem with it is that, or at least the problem that I'm shedding some light on, is that in like the New Age community, for example, right, we have this idea of the New Earth, right? And the idea of the New Earth is essentially the entire Earth living in harmony and living in peace. And, from my point of view, I would essentially define it as anarchy, where everyone is self-sovereign and mature.
But that means that everyone has to have personal responsibility.
Exactly. And personally responsible enough so that we can operate as sovereigns without having the need for control through violent coercion, right? And it's sort of like these things create each other, right? The violent coercion creates the conditions that lead to people having a lack of responsibility and then need to be controlled, But, it's like, it's important to make the distinction between those two potential realities, right? So the one reality being we have a New World Order, where, George Orwell, his vision of the world essentially becomes our reality.
Yep.
Or the
Talking
New
about
Earth.
1984, right?
Yeah. Or
thought crime.
yes, we're there. We're
we
there.
are, and it's really bad.
So
I need more water. I'll be right back.
okay, do you want to take a break for a minute?
No, I'm good. Keep going.
Can we take a break for a minute?
Oh yeah.
And it probably would be a good idea anyway, just because we might lose video, and I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, that sucks.
So we'll be right back. All right, we took a quick break and we are back. And I think that Dan wanted to make a point on, was it rights that you were going to make a point on real briefly?
Yeah, I was just going to say that when you're talking about women's rights or men's rights, I think that's where the issues come up because you're segregating, again, the population. You talk about human rights. We're all human beings. So if you're going to talk about rights, then they have to apply to everyone, period. Because otherwise you get issues.
I agree.
Like we see today. So
it's a means of creating another dialectic, which is what we're seeing with the social programming, the prevailing social programming. They're intentionally pitting groups against each other.
Yep.
This is what, this thing I brought up, months and months ago when the riots first started, and we just talked about, it's not a topic that I really want to go into.
Yep.
But that was what got me demonetized, and I got demonetized for harmful content because I told people not to go be violent.
yeah,
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're gonna kind of switch gears here and talk a little bit about the dating scene a little bit, I guess, and talk about, kind of the male perspective on that. And Dan and I have some similar views on this.
and some disparate ones.
Yeah, totally. Obviously, those of you who watch my channel know that I get into a lot of occult knowledge, and I get into a lot of ideas about where humanity could potentially be heading. Mm-hmm. And so, I try to be very cognizant of where we are.
Yep.
And the reality that we exist in, and seeing it for what it is. But at the same time, I think that I'm also a bit of an idealist, and I still strive for maybe something that, maybe to be quite frank, isn't possible at this particular moment.
Yep.
For me and the majority of the population, but may be possible in the future. And so, that's I think where our disparity lies. Mm-hmm. But
well, I don't think there's anything wrong with being an idealist. It's when you are an idealist to the point where you expect other people to think that way, and that's where you run into trouble because, again, it's like that echo room. You start thinking that other people think that way, and not everyone does. So
yeah, I think that that's maybe something that I struggle with a little bit. Well, I think I actually do understand that other people don't think that way. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, though, I do have like an unconscious expectation for people to align with my point of view when it's maybe not reasonable to expect. But again, I'm not perfect either, so I have my own ideas, and I'm kind of headstrong and stubborn about them. So,
sure.
And I think that, again, that is an archetype that's needed here. Mm-hmm.
Well, again, I think a lot of us out there see how the world could be, and we're very impatient and wondering why the hell it's not getting to that point quicker.
Right.
Even though we are moving like in these directions that are absolutely insanely fast compared to, if you look at human history, like where we've come in 20 years is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And we have not evolved to deal with this. Like we have not evolved to use technology.
No.
But we're using it. So for better or for worse, it's destroying relationships because we don't know how to use it correctly or in a way that's human. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost becoming like we're enslaved by the technology rather than using it as a tool. Mm-hmm. Putting it in its proper place.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the issues that we're seeing, like with the one of the potential issues we may be seeing with things like the implants, like that Elon Musk is proposing, and things of that nature.
Sure.
Make people dependent on the technology to a degree that's probably very unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And I think that this technology can be used in a way that's that's healthy, that's balanced, that can be for the greatest good of humanity. And I think it can also be taken to an extreme that will I keep joking around about, yeah, pretty soon they're going to be putting some of y'all in tubes with pink goo, So,
But at the same time, imagine being able to have a conversation at the speed of that both of you can think. You could have what would take 4 hours to get out verbally in a matter of minutes, which would be great. That's a really great possibility, but whether or not we'll use it for that is a different story.
Right. And, just real briefly before we move on to the men's and women's issues, my argument there would be that, my personal belief would be that humanity is capable of that without the technology. So in other words, developing things like communicating through telepathy and communicating large amounts of data and concepts on essentially like what you would call a subconscious level very quickly. Mm-hmm. And an example of this would be like the Aboriginal concept of dream time. And this is something that has been a part of their culture for a long time. That's a whole bigger discussion.
Whole nother ball of wax. Yeah, because we have done studies with telepathy, and the problem is that the data is just not there. So
right.
Our brains have not evolved to that point.
Right.
They may in the future, which would be amazing.
And that's my point, is that I think it's possible. Yeah.
But how long is it going to take?
Are we there now? No, we're not. We're in agreement on that point.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit. We were just talking outside about the issues with the dating scene and the masculine perspective on that. So those of you who watch my channel are probably very well aware I speak a lot about twin flames. This is something that Dan and I have discussed to a degree. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it's something that you're well read on.
I'm not well read on it. I have had the conversations with you, mm-hmm. and my own personal thought on what we've discussed is that would be amazing if that was a thing. I haven't seen it. And again, you've experienced something that I have not, and I am absolutely willing to acknowledge that. I've never experienced that twin flames thing. I've never experienced such a strong connection with a human being like that in that way. Right. So I'm not discounting it. Like I can't sit here and say it doesn't exist because A, I don't know enough about it. B, I've never experienced that. So just because I've never experienced something, surprisingly, doesn't mean it's not true.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about this is that in my personal experience, the level of connection that I experienced, in the physical with this person was actually not. There wasn't a whole lot of a connection there. Mm. It was what happened to me as a result of meeting that person.
Okay.
So sort of like my own experiences and my own transformation as a result of the interaction with that person. Mm. But the degree to which we connected in terms of the amount of time that we spent together, the amount that we communicated, mm-hmm. Those sorts of things, it wasn't that high, but anyway, that's a whole another ball of wax. The whole twin flame thing, which I have discussed at length on my channel, and you're free to check those videos out. But I guess what I want to discuss right now is the prevailing themes in society. Mm. So, as a segue here, what basically the purpose of these so-called twin flame connections or these high-level soul connections at this time is to essentially transmute the negative relationship templating. So in other words, right now we're seeing an extreme level of dysfunction with relationships on this planet, right?
Because a lot of people think that it's supposed to work a certain way, and the reality is that it does not.
Exactly. So, and so one of the you could say the missions, the goals of the whole twin flame paradigm mm-hmm. is to take on that energy. So in other words, to become sort of that toxic energy, but then to correct it within ourselves and sort of model that for other people, right?
Okay.
And that can come across as a little bit arrogant, but actually, this is sort of like a shamanic template. This is something that's been present in the archetypes throughout history. And that's essentially the function of a shaman. So, I guess what we're trying to get right now, or where I'm trying to get, is what are we seeing right now? Like, what are the distortions? What are the issues? Where are we seeing disparity between how we think things should work, how things actually work, what people think of as an ideal romance, and what's actually feasible at this point? What do you think that we're seeing here?
Well, I'll start with the basic examples. So you have these dating apps, right, which are horrible for guys. But the reason why is because I think different. And again, we're talking about the majority, not everyone, because there's a lot of outliers. And even if it's only 5% of people, that's still a lot of people. It's just that trying to find those people is tough. So yeah. So let's say, for example, a dating app. So if you're from what I have seen and from the women that I've talked to, you generally will create a profile and then you will get hit on by guys, right? Or you will create a profile, and if you're a female looking for a guy, now if it's Tinder and you're looking for a relationship, stop. It's Tinder, okay? Just stop. There's a movie about finding this crazy relationship on Tinder. That's a Disney fantasy. Like, that's probably not going to happen to you. It might. And if it does, awesome. But you're going to be in the vast minority of people that happens to. So females will generally, from what I've seen, females will generally look at guys' profiles, and they will look at all of the images that a guy has on there, right? And females tend to judge the guys on the dating app based on their worst photo, okay? It's just this what it is. And guys on a dating app will judge a female based on her best photo. And this is like a known thing. They've done all these studies on this.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If a guy is on a dating app, okay, especially if it's Tinder, here's how a guy typically uses Tinder. He wakes up, and while he's on the shitter, if I can say that word.
Oh, yeah, you can say
that. In the
that.
morning. He will smash the heart button, right, while he's brushing his teeth. He will smash that heart button until there's no more hearts left. So it'll take him 5 minutes, and then he'll go on about his day. And when he takes lunch at work, he might do it again, and that's it, right? That is it. So a lot of women out there are saying, oh, I've got 200, 300 matches from these guys. No, you don't. Trust me. It's guys that are just smashing everything in sight, because we know as guys that women have the choice and women control sex, right? It's not a bad thing. We don't think it's a bad thing. I hope not. Anyways, it is what it is. So generally guys are a little more analytical to, as a whole, again, not to trigger people. It's as a whole. We're a little more analytical. So we know that we're going to play the numbers. Okay, so I'm going to smash the heart button, and I don't do Tinder anymore. But
nor I.
I did it for like a year, and I realized it was fun. Don't get me wrong.
But a couple of times, but it's not for me.
It's shallow, and I know it sounds like a pussy thing to say, but it's shallow, and it's fun, but that's it. But anyways, we're going to filter later, right? So if a woman talks to us on Tinder, generally, now some guys will reach out to women on Tinder. Generally, guys aren't going to do that, because we have, it sounds harsh, but we have shit to do. We have jobs to live. We have to survive, all right? We don't have any safety nets out here. We got to work. We got to get a job. We got to pay our rent, just like everyone else. But there's certain safety nets in society that are there for more women than there are for more guys. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. And it just is what it is.
And that is a factual statement.
Yep. And it's just going off objective data.
Yep.
So, like I said, not hating on it. It just is what it is.
Right.
So just that disparity alone, where many women will assume that guys are looking at their profiles and matching them, right, for validation reasons, because everyone needs validation on some level. I find enough validation in my day-to-day life and with my job and with the people I interact with that I don't feel the need for validation from social media. Some people do, and that's okay too. But just understand that is only validation, and it's fake validation. It's really what's going on.
I've talked about this a lot as well. Mm-hmm. explosion of selfies, especially.
Yeah, I remember, like, I'm old enough, probably shouldn't say this, I'm 38 years old, and I'm old enough to remember when we used to make fun, when I was in the military, we'd make fun of people that were taking selfies because they didn't have the friends to take photos for them. I remember that, right? That was a thing. That used to be a thing, guys.
Yeah.
And girls.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
But at this point, we've pretty much all done it, you know.
yeah. We're all guilty of it. But I don't know. I think I've taken maybe 8 selfies in my entire life. So,
Right.
and they were for apps that needed my face for, verification. So,
I want to bring up a trend, and I don't know how this stacks up historically in terms of whether this has always been a problem or whether it is becoming more of a problem now. One of the things that I've seen personally, right, is frankly, again, trigger warning. This might not be pleasant for some of you to hear, but it's the truth. One of the things that we see is attractive young women who have just, a whole cheering squad of what we call beta orbiters. I guess we could define that term real quick. A beta orbiter is the guy who will, basically put himself in a woman's, in her, what would you say, presence, or just sort of in her consciousness by texting her or just being available to her all the time, right? She's not interested in him. She's told him she's not interested in him in that way, and yet he continues to maybe be her friend or that type of thing, but it's dishonest because he actually wants to date her. He doesn't actually want to be her friend. And when he tells her that he's okay with being her friend, he's lying to her. And
I think that's an important distinction to make because there's always outliers. There are guys that have platonic female friends and they're fine with it and they know that's what that is. But there are so many guys out there, the majority of guys, I would say, that have female friends, they want to fuck you. That's why they're your friend. And that sounds crash and that sounds shallow, but that is biology and that is our male drive. So it sucks, but that is what it is.
So the issue that I'm pointing out here...
Put it this way. If she said, I want to sleep with you, guarantee you that guy would not say no.
Right.
There you go.
So there's that. Another issue that's created here as a result of this, which I would define as weak beta male behavior, frankly, is that there are an inordinate amount of women who are young and attractive like that, who have extreme personality disorders to the point of being extremely toxic. Just they're really frankly not good people. But they're allowed to get away with it, and they don't have to earn the respect and the attention and the admiration and all of these positive benefits that they get from their beauty.
And I blame us guys for that because we have enabled that crap.
Exactly, and that's why I tell guys, stop, going online and checking out these girls' selfies all the time and telling them how beautiful they are.
That's one thing I will say women are good at. Women are good at not enabling guys. So good on you.
But it creates this dynamic where it's almost like a relationship with, it's sort of a reflection of the daddy issue thing. It's like she's got an imbalanced father that's just given her everything, right? And so they've got a whole lineup of men that are willing to just take care of them and to feed them and clothe them and give them everything. And these women do not have to be faithful. They don't have to do anything to earn that attention. They don't have to do anything to earn, being taken care of. They don't have to be responsible. There's just so many things that, guys will just put up with because they're pretty. And it creates... what it does is it creates women that end up having serious fucking issues because at some point that beauty fades. And then people are going to only, judge them and be associated with them based on their personality attributes that they either have or have not developed.
Yep.
And if at that point they haven't developed a personality that is actually congruent with, existing in a harmonious way and, being a decent person, guess what? It gets pretty ugly for them pretty fast.
Yep.
And that's a reality.
Yeah, and that sucks because you see the rates of suicides among women going up because of that. Because, if you are a attractive female and, the world is your oyster, great, all right? Use it. Make a plan, though, for the future. Invest your money, figure it out, because someday that will change. And some women, that doesn't change for a very long time. And other women, that changes when they're in the late 30s. So
Right.
my age,
Yeah.
So it sucks. And that's what really is discouraging for me is when I hear some women out there that disparage quote unquote men's channels talking about this stuff. And what they're not getting is that now there are guys out there that are just hating, and I get that. And
Sure.
and those guys, they're going through what I like to call the red pill rage phase.
Yeah.
It's something that a lot of us guys go through. It's literally just because society has lied to us and we thought it worked a certain way, and then we found out that it doesn't.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, and it's not that we're mad at women or something like that. We're more mad because we thought it worked a certain way, so we planned our lives around that,
Right.
and we found out the rug was pulled out.
We got sold a fairy tale our whole lives.
Yeah, we found out there was no
Santa
rug under our
Claus
feet.
wasn't real.
Yeah, exactly. Like Santa Claus isn't real. Your mom's tits are fake. None of your dreams will come true. So
Yeah.
So that's the thing. A lot of these channels, they really are concerned, and they are really trying to help women out in the best way they know how as dudes is to be analytical and try to give them a warning or a heads up, but there are some women out there that just hate on them, and that's really discouraging because okay, fine, that's where you see guys just completely walking away. They're like, well, I'm done then, I'm useless, I have no place in society, I'm out.
Right.
And so there's a lot of dudes out there that retire at 35 and live off the land and drive a bus around, and that's all they do.
So it's just
And those don't get into the unemployment numbers because they're technically retired.
right. Yeah.
So
there's again, just looking at things logically, there is merit to the you've seen the graphs on the sexual market value.
absolutely. Yep.
And for like young attractive women, right? They have an immense amount of power that they didn't earn. They don't honestly often know how to use responsibly.
They've earned it in that they've taken care of their bodies, right?
Sure.
So you can't discount that.
I guess that's a good point. That's a good point. But in a lot of ways, it's like I said. You see girls that are just treat men like garbage.
Yep.
And fuck with men's hearts intentionally. Are like this, and
the men that stick around, those are the beta workers. Those are the men that just are doormats, and you'll see them. You see guys like this. You'll see women dating guys like this, and then women wonder why they're getting bored with these guys. It's because they don't. You're not a strong person. You don't have you don't have a strong individual personality, and so that's boring for anyone. If I was with a female who was just a doormat, I'd have a hard time respecting that individual as a human being, as a person. And it's not because they're a woman. It's because I can just say whatever I want. They don't push back or disagree.
Yeah. And
there's no fun in that.
No, there isn't. And, I think that this is another place where, the philosophy gets a little bit muddled, right? So I think that there are probably people who might watch this video who might think that, myself and Dan would be intimidated by a strong woman. And that's absolutely not the case. I want a strong woman.
Yep.
I want someone who can be my equal. I want someone who can get in my face and challenge me when I'm, fucking up and call me on my bullshit.
Yep.
I don't want somebody who's going to be a pushover,
Yep.
And frankly, I think we're on the same page here. I love women. I love being around women. I think it's awesome. I think it's one of the best things I get to do,
I mean, this is probably not going to go over well, but if there were no women around, it'd be a real pain in the ass.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that would be unanimous.
Sorry, guys.
It's fine.
Take that at face value and don't read into it. It's not a comment. So. Oh,
Someone here? Oh, it's Jared. You wanna? Hey, we're just making a video real quick.
yeah, no problem.
We can pause or we can continue. It's not. I think it'd be all right. We can continue.
Yeah.
So let's see here.
So, when it comes to dating and the lies that people tell themselves,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, the whole intimidated by a strong, independent woman.
Yeah.
That's a load of hot garbage. I'm not sure any guy. I mean, there's probably guys that are intimidated because, again, for every aspect of human nature, you can find someone that's an example of that. But yeah, I mean, full disclosure, my ex-wife had her PhD. Has her PhD. She's a very intelligent individual. I have nothing bad to say about her. The only reason we got divorced really was because A, she started wanting kids, and B, our careers were going two different ways. And so this is a modern society. We don't live in an agrarian society anymore. So marriage, unfortunately, a lot of times doesn't last because of that. It doesn't mean that personalities were clashing and, we weren't fighting and all that shit. But, and we did handle it like adults, and there were no lawyers involved, thank God. But, yeah, I mean, I think with technology and with the way the world has evolved, things have become way more complicated. And the problem with human beings is that we're really simple, but we're really complicated at the same time. And we haven't figured out how to deal with that on a societal level. And so you see all this stuff happening because
Right.
people are tired, people are sad, people don't know how to fix it, they don't know what to do, and so they give up.
Right.
And you're seeing a lot of that. And that's where you see in some of the higher levels of the MGTOW community, they've just given up and walked away.
Yeah,
Which is sad.
That's actually the next point I was going to ask you about, because you're much more well versed in the MGTOW culture than I am.
Yep.
What's the prevailing attitude in the MGTOW culture? And I realize that a lot of people think that these men are hateful.
Mm-hmm.
I would say on the aggregate, they're really not. They're just looking at things the way that they are. Now, are there some men who get the red pill rage when they first,
Oh, absolutely.
experience this? Yes. Are there some guys that kind of stay in that hateful mentality? Yes.
Unfortunately.
But I think the majority of them are like you, like myself. We're just looking at things the way they are, and we're going,
Yep.
this situation kind of sucks.
Yep. Yeah, and again, the rage comes from the situation, not the people involved.
Right.
And it's really a lot of frustration, because again, they felt like they were lied to their entire lives because they were, and not intentionally. It's because the people that were there before them thought it worked a certain way and it didn't.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, when it comes to the MGTOW community, and again, I will never say that I can speak for an entire community just because I'm one person, and obviously that would be naive. However, from what I've seen, the MGTOW community in general are guys that have figured out how it works. They understand that, sure, there's outliers. I mean, you will see the groups out there that say all women are like this, but even they don't usually believe it because that's not how statistics and math work. And that's one of the things that the MGTOW community bases their views on is statistics and math. So they've just figured out that it's not worth it, right? So for me, is there my soulmate out there? Sure, probably, right? But is it worth my time to go actively pursue that? And then, so for example, when you first get with another person, basically if you look at it from a biological perspective, you have all these hormones that happen in your brain, right? And it's almost the same as someone being insane. And then after about 2 years, they calm down. And that's why you see a lot of relationships start falling apart at the 2-year mark, because that infatuation is gone. So now the things that were cute are now annoying,
Right.
It just is what it is. And if you think about it from a biological perspective, that's about enough time to impregnate someone, get the kid to where they can kind of survive, and then move on, right? And so biologically and from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people don't buy into the evolutionary explanation, but it's undeniable, it's there. So even if that's not the whole story, that's a big part of it. So with the MGTOW community, yeah, that's all I really have to say is that, they've just kind of walked away from the table. And if nothing else, people talk about incels. I personally have a hard time with that term, because I don't care how ugly of a dude you are. If you've got a couple $100 in your pocket and you're looking, you're going to find someone who is willing to trade goods for services.
Right.
It's human nature. It is what it is. You're not going to stop it. Let's just decriminalize it so that everyone has, police protection.
I do think that a lot of people would shy away from that type of transaction, though, based on the inherent risks and the, I would say, a little bit maybe misguided ethical issues there.
Well, and a lot of that stems from societal's viewpoints.
Right.
A lot of the risk stems from the fact that it is illegal. So the people that are willing to do that tend to be in a desperate situation.
Prohibition doesn't work. Never has.
It doesn't. Really doesn't. And I cannot believe that our government hasn't figured that out. But
I don't think they want to. I think they have a vested interest in not figuring it out due to privatized prisons and the lobbyists that are involved in that and those sorts of things, right?
Which I have something to say about privatized prisons. I used to be completely against them. And then I was talking to someone the other day who has done prison time. And they brought up a good point. They said that a lot of people that are in prisons want to get to a private prison because they have things
cushy.
like air conditioning.
Yeah.
Air conditioning, all right? Mm-hmm. That's a thing that apparently doesn't exist in a lot of state prisons. So, and they have better education systems and stuff like that. So really, the real key is, yes, private prisons are bad because you are looking at, am I increasing my shareholder value if I'm not putting people in jail? That's a problem, or in prison. That's a problem. But at the same time, we have to improve the state and federal systems. And if none of you have ever been to a state or federal prison, generally you can visit them, and I would highly recommend it. It's an eye-opening experience. It's one of those things that you should be aware of, because God forbid you're ever in a bad situation like that where you end up going to prison. You should know what to expect. So
I have not personally visited a prison, but I have teleported into jail a couple of times after a night of hard drinking.
by teleport, you mean you blacked out
and woke up in jail. Yeah.
How did I get here?
It's a Sasquatch teleporting, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
happens.
the Sasquatch. He's a half spiritual, half physical being. He teleports. That's why you can't find him. Word to the wise.
It does happen. Don't black out.
Yeah. No. So, one of the things we were talking about earlier is this situation that we're seeing with dating. I wanted to get your perspective on this. Well, one of the things that I'm seeing is that I'm not sure if it's just in St. Pete. I don't think so. I've noticed that people in this town are pretty flaky in general. They just don't. They're not real concerned with keeping their word. And
I have a theory on that.
I would love to hear it. But before we go into that, I just want to finish the question. One of the things that we were discussing before is that, it's just happening so often. It's kind of making me give up on trying to date anybody, because I'm not going to do the Tinder thing, right? I don't want to play the numbers. I don't want to do that. I don't want to meet somebody through that kind of platform. It's not for me.
Well, you're looking for something a little more long-lasting and real than just a hookup.
Right. And, but I meet women in the flesh. Seems like we hit it off. We have a great conversation. It is the best way. And, but what happens is, it's like, we'll have a great conversation. I'll be like, hey, you want to go do whatever? Mm-hmm. And then they flick.
Yep.
And then you ask them, and they keep saying yes, and they keep flicking. And it's like, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, why why is this happening? What is this doing to the male psyche? And like, is this something that is innate in the biology, or is this something that women can fix and correct and not do anymore?
Well, so when it comes to rejection, because that's really what you're talking about, just not a direct rejection, more women are experiencing rejection and they're not used to it, simply because more men are kind of realizing how this is working. And plus, I think it all stems back to, I mean, it's 2020 and we're still working 40 hours a week. Like, what the hell are we doing?
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense. We have so many jobs out there. The only thing that I could see is if you're in a production job where you actually have to produce parts and everything like that. But even then, surely we have enough people to do that job that you can do 20-hour shifts or 20-hour weeks. Maybe not. Haven't looked enough into that. But when it comes to relationships, many women do have a lot of options, obviously, when it comes to men, because women control sex, but we chase it, right? That's just oversimplifying it, but that's really how it works. So they have enough guys that are chasing them, and a lot of women, I suspect, and again, I'm a guy, so I can't speak for women, but from what I've seen, they have a lot of different options, and they're afraid to make the wrong choice, right? Or they talk themselves out of something, or they get a little nervous or scared because sometimes, and guys do this too, you'll come across a person that seems a little too good to be true. And I'm not saying that's your case, Joe, but or mine. But sometimes you come across a person that seems a little too good to be true, and you don't want to get your heart broken again. You don't want to deal with the rejection again. Or you quite simply just don't have the time in your life to put towards pursuing that relationship. And so you flake out and you go do your own thing. And I think that's happening more often than not. Or, I mean, it could very well be as basic as a woman that you meet in person just does want a hookup. Because guess what, guys? Women are just as horny as guys, if not more so. They just hide it better. Like, you should look up the female gaze. And if you're a guy out there that doesn't believe me, start looking around. Women in general are very, very good at hiding when they're watching you, right? But if you start, because guys we're just stupid. We're not observant, and we just go through life like Neanderthals for most of us. And but if you start really looking around and paying attention, you will notice that women will be looking at guys. If not you, then they'll be looking at someone else. But as soon as the guy turns to look, they look away. Like, it's really interesting to watch that dynamic. And
it's funny, since you pointed that out to me, I've been noticing it. I didn't know that before.
Yep. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Like, this is...
They don't want to be caught.
Nope.
Looking at you.
Nope. Well, and part of that is the whole societal bullshit of that dual, if a woman sleeps with a lot of guys, then she's a slut or a whore. And if a guy sleeps with a lot of girls, then he's a stud.
Well, that's because a lock that is opened by many keys is a shitty lock, and a key that opens many locks is a master key.
I get that.
It's just a joke.
I get that. It's an analogy like anything else. But
it's a bad joke. Sorry.
Now one thing for the women watching out there, I will give you this. All right. Boy, I don't know if I should say this. I'm just going to say it. Take it for what it is.
Let's go.
I'm not hating. Someone put it to me this way. He was like, "Look, I get what you're saying. However, there are fat, ugly sluts out there, and there are no fat, ugly studs." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I mean, I guess I'll give you that. I don't know any fat, ugly dudes that are studs."
Oh, Ron Jeremy might give you a
Dude, okay, talk about outliers. He's an outlier. Where did he get his charisma? Like, he's not even that big. But anyways, it's another topic. But yeah, when it comes to people that are flaky, so my theory for flaky people in general is because this is Florida. So in Florida, like, I'm from New York, and in New York, it's wintertime, like 6 months, not 6 months, but at least 3 months out of the year, right? And if you don't have friends up in New York that are reliable, and your car breaks down on the highway, you may freeze to death before they can get to you, because
I've thought about
we've had people die every year there, right?
Yeah.
In Florida, if you make plans with someone and you don't meet them, And I've had the same thing with Joe, actually. We've been trying to do this for like 3 weeks, and I've had stuff come up, and I feel like an asshole because I'm like, God damn it, I'm that flaky person now. But
I've done it too, or, you know.
Yeah, I've legitimately just had stuff happen in my life. But anyways, yeah, so in Florida, if you don't meet one day, you can meet the next, or you can meet next weekend, because the weather's usually nice. And even if it's raining, it's a warm rain. So for all of you that have never been in Florida, like, and I'm talking middle Florida, like St. Pete area, yeah, it's really nice, guys. And please don't move down here. We have too many people already. So stay up there, please.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
You know, another thing I thought about, I was actually watching Game of Thrones, and Martin actually really captured the mentality of people from northern European cultures really, really well. Like the whole idea that like they don't trust outsiders, and like you know they're very set in their ways, and like they they're just very like hard people. They're like hardened, you know.
Yep.
And
but if you get to know them, they're the best people.
Yeah. But when they first meet you, I mean, like where I'm from Maine. I'm from like a small town in Maine, and like Maine, like people that are actually from Maine that are like, you know, I would consider like natives, right? Like myself, right? I grew up in a family that, you know, goes back like 9 generations in Maine, right? We call people that are not from there, they're from away. And it's like, you know, that's how they actually say it, like, oh, he's from away. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's not quite like that as much anymore, but when I was younger, it was like that. Yep. And we didn't lock our doors. Half the time we left the keys in the ignition in the car when we went into the gas station. I mean, it was like that.
Yep.
You trusted everybody. Everybody was fucking armed. Everybody had guns. There was guns in every corner of our house. Yep. You just laying in the corner. And when you're a kid, you knew not to touch the guns. You knew not to play with them. Everybody knew how to handle them safely. I mean, it was, and everybody was safe.
You mean adults had personal responsibility and taught their kids?
Oof, yeah, sounds crazy, right?
What a concept.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, they really captured that really well in Game of Thrones. But it does create, you know, living in a harsh environment like that, mm-hmm. It does create a situation. It also kind of breeds strong men, and one of the reasons for it is that, you know, I mentioned this in my video about weak, cowardly men, you know, is that, like, you know, let's say that you and I are in the woods, right? And yep. A bear shows up.
Yep.
And, you know, we are, you know, we're a team. Right?
I'm going to outrun him.
See, that's the problem right there. So what I said in the video was basically, like, you know, you can't trust a coward in that situation, right? You need your brother to fucking stand there and stand his ground and fight the fucking bear off with you, right? If he runs away, like Dan here, then you're fucked. Or,
it's the same thing in the military, like, and obviously, if you've never been in combat,
going to war.
Yeah, you can have all the training in the world. You're never going to know what you're going to do until you're in that situation.
Right.
And I saw one guy in particular that caved, and you know, they got him out of the military. I don't think he had a dishonorable discharge or anything, but he could have gotten people killed. But at the same time, you're never going to know how you're going to actually react until you're in that situation.
And you had to discharge him.
Yep.
You had to let him go, because that's, you know, in that situation,
they're not fit for the military, which is fine. Like, go be a civilian.
Right.
So,
and you know, there are people that are capable of fulfilling those roles and people that are not. You know. And so I suppose, you know, maybe, you know, I got to make my own corrections as I go. I made that video a little bit black and white, you know, because I was like, this is how men are supposed to be, you know. And
well, you were making a point.
Yeah.
And so to make a point, sometimes you have to be a little black and white.
Yeah, you got to bring out the contrast a little bit, and I think that I did that.
Yep. Because then you open up the dialogue for nuance.
Right. That's true. Yeah, I agree. Good point. But yeah, so... you know, that's the whole reason why, you know, me personally, you know, I appreciate, you know, that's why I appreciate Dan. Dan's one of the few guys I know that, you know, like I
appreciate you too, man.
He gives it to me straight. Yep. And, you know, when he gives me his word on something, he means it. And, you know, I know that he means it. And, you know, that means a lot to me, right? And it's something that I feel is lacking in the culture, and it seems to be slipping away more and more and more.
Yep.
But yeah, back to the.
Well, I think part of that is because we are so independent now with technology, or at least we have a sense that we're independent. And I think that's the biggest thing. Because, so if I get stranded out somewhere, I can just call an Uber, right?
Oh,
Before
right,
I need to call a friend or a taxi.
You had to have more reliable people in your life. Yeah,
Right.
I'd see that point. Yeah, I never thought of that before. Yeah, I would say that's accurate. But yeah, we'll probably wrap this up pretty soon. But what do you think? What do you think's a good thing to leave people with in terms of how to deal with this, and like with the dating scene and all that? Like, what do we do? Like, what does a guy like me do? Like, for example, I know there's other guys, I mean, certainly watching my channel, because the guys that watch my channel are probably going to have similar views to me, right? Mm-hmm. I'm looking for, eventually, I'm okay with maybe doing a little casual dating, but, eventually, and not in the too far distant future, I would like to still, I don't have to get the official, legal marriage thing, but I want to get married. I want to have a life partner, and I would like to have children, right?
Yep.
What do you have to offer for guys like that? What are they going to do?
Well, the first thing is you don't have to sign a contract with the government. You can live with someone. You can live with someone. You can buy rings. You can have a party. No one's ever going to ask you for your marriage license.
Right.
No one, right? I can make Joe my proxy on my health insurance if I wanted to. Like, you can do that nowadays. The tax purposes, they're not worth it. They're just not worth signing a contract with the government to get married. And I wish that I didn't think that, but I do. It's just the nature of the thing. So for guys that are out there looking, it's not hopeless, right? There are outlier females out there. I have met them. Not to get into my own thing, but I do. Well, we'll get into that later, but it's not the right time for it. But yeah, like, I would say, don't close yourself off completely, but at the same time, understand that you may very well statistically end up alone. All right, with friends, but not married or not with a female partner, and that's okay. And I think that's the thing, is that people have to understand that is okay. The most important thing is your support system. You will hear married guys. There's a Reddit forum out there called, I think it's called Dead Bedrooms, and I went through this myself in my first marriage. I have never felt so alone as being in bed with a person who did not love me anymore, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
And that feeling alone, I would much rather take the feeling of being lonely, and even though I have friends and a good support network down here, I would not take that feeling over the feeling of being alone with friends, right? So, because when I was married, my first marriage, didn't have that many friends. I mean, I had military friends, but when you're living with someone, they tend to take up a lot of your time. And so that's less time you have to develop friendships and relationships with other people.
Right.
So I would say, don't give up hope, but at the same time, understand that statistically you probably will die alone. Well, we all die alone. I don't care if you're married or whatever, most people die alone.
So it's about accepting the idea that that's a potential.
Yeah. And once you accept that and you're no longer afraid of it, then you can start thinking rationally and, keeping an eye out for those relationships that are good and that are healthy, and keeping an eye out for those women, or if you're bisexual or gay, those other men, because homosexual relationships and bisexual relationships deal with the same shit that heterosexual relationships deal with. Like, they do. So, yeah, I mean, just basically having that knowledge and understanding, keeping yourself open, but at the same time being okay with being alone in that sense, if that makes sense.
It's an interesting thing as well, that's actually in alignment with what people who talk about twin flames teach, right? It's something that I actually teach, right? Is if that's a fear that you have, that is a fear that you need to overcome.
Yep, I would
agree. If you do end up with someone, right? But when you
Because if you have that fear and you end up with someone, they might be the best person for you, but you're going to sabotage it.
That's right. Because unconsciously you're going to act needy and you're going to like be like afraid of them leaving. So you're going to get clingy. And I've done this. I've done this a bunch of times, right? Because I had abandonment issues. I had rejection issues, right? And so unconsciously I couldn't even control myself. I'm watching myself do this. I'm like texting like angry or whatever, right? Or like needy or whatever the fuck I'm doing, right? And I'm like, I know I'm doing this. I know I'm sabotaging myself. I know I'm coming across as needy. I know this is going to push her away, and I'm doing it anyway. And that's, I think, maybe part of my own personality is that like I can't hide my emotions. I can't fucking do it at all.
Sure.
Like if I have any like hint of an emotion, you're gonna see it in my face and in my communication, right?
And that's something that's not really compatible with many women.
No. Being
even though they think it is, it's not long term.
Yeah. Being a guy that's highly emotional, it's there's nothing wrong with being emotional. The problem is when that I guess archetype is combined with things like abandonment issues and neediness and that kind of thing, right? When you haven't conquered those things, they become magnified by the fact that you're an emotional person. And then it becomes like really, really over apparent, like in my case, right? Like if I get needy, like it's like right in your face and it's really unattractive, and I know it, and I've had to work on the underlying issues. But yeah, I think, I don't know, I was trying to make some kind of point with that. But it's something to be overcome, basically, is the fear of being alone, the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection. When you overcome,
and I think that goes for both genders.
That's when you
I don't think that's male
decent.
specific.
Yeah.
Because women sabotage relationships just like guys do.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
We all think, men and women think a little bit differently as a whole. I know that's crazy, and that's like totally against like what people think.
Oh, yeah. That was one of the things I was going to bring up earlier in terms of people saying that, like gender's a social construct, or that there's no difference between men and women other than genitalia. It's like, that's fucking nonsense.
Yeah.
There's
Most people are in denial, and they have an agenda, and they're probably trying to find a part of themselves. So, and that's probably a way they're dealing with their own lives. So I can't discount that belief or that thought, but is it... The biggest thing, and this is something that I've talked to women about too. I'm like, if you're running into guys that are assholes and dicks, it's probably because it's worked for them in the past. Yes. Guys tend to do things and continue to do things because it's worked for them.
Everybody does that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how do you solve that?
Yeah. I mean,
stop going out with dicks.
That's basic psychology. That's just classical conditioning, right?
Yep.
I do a thing, it gets me a certain result. It becomes like a subroutine. It becomes like a subconscious program. Oh, I do this to, I do X to get Y.
Yep.
Right? I get sex if I'm a dickhead. Okay, I'm a bit dickhead. It's absolutely true. And it's operating in all of our psyches all the time.
Yep.
Even from the point of, being a little kid. And, there's a book called The Four Agreements, which is a great book. I highly recommend everybody read it. One of the things they talk about in the book is this little girl who loves to sing, right? She's singing her heart out, and, she's actually pretty good at it. Her mother one day is in a bad mood, right? And this girl's like 34 years old, right? And her mother's in a bad mood one day and basically says, can you stop that singing? And, gets all pissed off at her. Well, that child interprets that as, oh, I'm bad if I sing.
Yep.
And the mother, I think in the
really
book,
fragile age.
Yeah, in the book, she also says something to her like it's horrible or something like that.
Oh.
So the rest of this kid's life, she thinks she's a horrible singer and won't sing in front of people, right? And is afraid to. And because they're 30 years old at this point, like we're talking about the now time, right? Doesn't realize that this happened. Doesn't even remember it at all.
Yep.
But it won't sing, has this fear of singing, but actually could have potentially been really good at it, but was conditioned out of it.
Yep.
Right? And that happens with so many different things. So many of us are dumbing ourselves down and not really being ourselves and showing the world who we are, and giving our gifts to the world in terms of like, things we can do, maybe like singing, maybe our art, maybe, playing music, or expressing ourselves, to women.
Yep.
For example, if you're a guy, yeah, these are all things that need to be looked at and overcome. I feel like, did I say overcome?
Possibly.
Overcome.
Overcome. Yeah.
Yeah. But
well, and that for any women that are watching this, I would say something that I have noticed lately, especially over the past like 3 years, is I see a lot of women that will completely dismiss a guy if he even starts talking about these issues. And what's happening when you do that is you're driving that person may be at a critical moment in their life where how you interact with that man or that male could change the way he views women as a whole. The one thing that I would say is, like I said, guys are fairly analytical. Some people are just, like I said, dicks, and they're just set in their ways and they're never going to change. And that does happen. But if you just dismiss the person without talking to them, and like just talk through their thought process, right? Ask why they feel that way. Like, don't ask who hurt them, right? That's like the really, just don't say that. It's really, what's the word I'm looking for? Formulaic. Like,
well,
it's one of those things that guys expect to hear. So don't go there. Just talk to them through like what they've experienced in their lives, or without using those.
I think
those
you're also
terms.
kind of in that situation saying, "Oh, you're just butthurt."
Yeah.
It's kind of like
it's
the
dismissive.
subtext there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're not actually listening to. You're not having a conversation to listen.
Yep.
Everything after that is just, oh, well, I know that he's only saying this because he's fucking angry and upset, and nothing he says matters.
And one thing that's helped me a lot, and this may help other people, and if it does, great. If it doesn't, sorry. One thing that's helped me a lot is whenever I start hearing, these, or having these conversations in my own head, or hearing other people have those conversations, switch the genders around. If it sounds messed up when you switch the genders around, it's probably messed up, and you probably shouldn't be thinking along those lines. But if it doesn't sound messed up, you're probably onto something.
Man, there was a freaking great chapter in The Rational Male about that. Did you read the book?
I'll be honest with you, I scanned through the book. I read it quickly.
Did you read the part where he made a Tinder profile that was like a woman's, but on a guy's profile?
Oh, no.
So basically, like the woman's...
That'd be a great social experiment.
I should actually just go get it real quick and read it, because it's...
Yeah, do you have it?
Yeah, I've got it in my room. Why don't we pause for a sec? I'm going to read this, and this will be how we end. Okay, we're back one more time. Probably going to try to make this fairly brief. We're going to probably end on this note, however this ends up going.
It's a fun exercise.
Yeah. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to read you basically it's a ghost profile that Rollo Tomasi, the author of The Rational Male, wrote.
Which, women, if you want a great insight into the male psyche, read that book.
Yeah, read this book.
Yep.
But what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to read you what Rollo found. He actually found this profile from a female Tinder account, right? And so he's giving this as an example of a typical female profile, right? And so I'm going to read it to you, and then Dan is going to read a similar profile written from a male perspective, and we're going to talk about some things after.
Remember when we talked about if you flip the roles, if it sounds messed up, it probably is? This will be a good example of that.
Yeah, that's how we ended up segueing into this. So
won't be perfect, but it'll be good. It'll be fun. It'll be more fun.
Yeah. So this is the female profile that Rollo found. Here's a well thought out idea of what kind of guy I'm interested in. 5'10" or taller, lives nearby, compassionate, intelligent, giving, very attractive. Someone other than your mother or sister has said so, LOL. In shape, prefer self-employed, family-oriented, Open to new and spontaneous things. Likes to camp, likes to golf, wants children, would be a good father and faithful husband. A gentleman. Gives me my space when I need it. Not a nerd or too sarcastic. Can take a hint. Social. Calls for no reason. Remembers sending a note or a nominal gift. Is romantic and necessary, respectful, sense of humor, and thinks the world of me. I am not interested in anyone older than 41 and anyone who makes less money than me, since I do not plan on changing the lifestyle that I have grown accustomed to, and hope to one day be a stay-at-home mom, and furthermore, my children will never want for anything, but of course not be spoiled brats either, lol. You should also love animals, and I am not attracted to redheads at all, lol, sorry. So, do you want to discuss that at all before we move on?
Yeah, I just want to put something in there. So mathematically speaking...
That's where the male profile starts there.
Perfect. So mathematically speaking, most of those things listed are independent variables, okay? So it's fairly easy to do this. What you can do is you can actually research the percentage of people that meet each of those criterias and then multiply those percentages. Then take that by the population of the world, okay, which is 49% men and 51% women. And then if you really want to have fun, and I've done this, multiply that by the land mass. And if you really want to make it fun, do it by the livable land mass. And you can break it down by country, but do it from the earth, right? And then find out how many people
actually match that
within
description.
Those thousands of square miles that you'll find probably match that description. And then that's your chances of finding someone like that. So
those of us who are versed in statistics know the answer to this question, and the answer is 0.
Yeah, it's not 0, but it's like might as well play the lottery too.
I think that list is 0. I don't think there's a guy that could possibly meet that list, because there's probably contradictions in it, which is normally pretty standard.
So my thing about self-employed, right? Probably, and I'm going to assume here, I'm going to do a male assumption. The reason why a female would probably want a self-employed man is so that he can spend more time with her. And this is a fallacy that both men and women fall into. When you're self-employed,
you work more.
You're probably going to be putting in 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
You're never not working.
Absolutely.
And that's the reality of running a business. Yeah. So, yeah. And if you talk to any business owner, they'll tell you that. If they are at a place where they can have time off, boy, they've been in business for a long time. So
starting a small business is no joke, and it's one of the things my father told me all the time. He was like, if you want to start your own business, I support you in doing that, but understand that you're going to be working your ass off.
Yep.
Okay.
It's really rewarding.
Understood.
And 90% of small businesses fail in the first 2 years. 90%.
Yeah, you're going to fail a bunch of times before you figure it out. I've started a lot of businesses and failed. So we're going to read the male equivalent that Rollo created. Now, keep in mind, this is like a ghost account that he made as a social experiment.
Right.
So he created this. This is basically a joke, but he presented it as real to see what would happen.
Because it is good social experimentation, and it's. I mean, when you're collecting data, it's good to do this stuff. So, and I would say for the women out there that are interested in this kind of stuff, create a male profile. And if you really want to get some interesting data, create 3 male profiles. Create one with a male supermodel, like some stock image. Create one with average guy, what you would consider to be an average guy, and then create one with what you would consider to be an ugly dude, right? Do that. Keep that account open for a couple months each, and see how it goes. It's really eye-opening.
Yeah, with the ugly guy on the profile part, like, make it so that he has all the traits that women say they want.
Oh, yes, that would be better. Yes.
But actually are not attracted to at all, and can't see the disparity there.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone's done that, so that would be a really interesting social experiment.
Yeah, make 2 identical profiles with the same image in different locations, and have one list all the qualities that women say they like in men but actually are not attracted to, the men that they friend zone.
Yep.
And then have one, listing the the qualities that actually are attractive to them.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. So here's the female equivalent of that profile. Here's a well thought out idea of what kind of gal I'm interested in. 5'5" or taller, but not over 6 feet, because while I don't mind being eye to eye with you, I won't ever be looking up to you. Lives close enough to be at my house within 10 minutes after I make the call, genuinely passionate, intelligent enough to be a good company, sexually available, preferably insatiably, and very attractive. We're talking Jessica Alba attractive. Women with a body fat percentage higher than 8% need not apply. Now, if you look up 8% body fat on women, I mean, they're pretty physically fit, but...
Well, that's like six-pack material.
Yeah. Must be employed, but not so well that you'll interfere with our sexual activities. Family-oriented, but only after you've hit 30 to 33. Opens to spontaneous sex, like outdoor stuff or a surprise three-way with one of your hot girlfriends after a second martini. Likes to camp in the nude. Knows not to complain when I go play golf with clients from work. She must want children after 33 years of age, if at all, and only after she's proven to be a good mother and faithful wife. Must be a lady with class, and know when the right time is to speak and not to speak. Not a prude or a bitch. Can take... Now, see, I don't use the word bitch anymore. I use the word asshole, because, you know what? If you're being an asshole, it doesn't matter what gender you are. You're being an asshole. Can take the first hint. Sociable. Unexpectedly texts me pictures of her wearing something new from Fredericks of Hollywood. Understands the best gift she can give me is expressing her desire to fuck me like a wild animal, and also understands the gifts for her are treats or rewards for desired behavior. Sounds fucked up so far.
Yeah.
Must be respectful of my decisions being final. Can't take herself too seriously and thinks the world of me. I'm not interested in anyone over 31, since this is most women's expiration date anyway. She cannot have exorbitant spending habits or a credit debt load in excess of $1,000, since I do not plan on changing the lifestyle I have grown accustomed to and hope to one day be able to send my own children to college rather than pay for your student debt.
Fair is fair.
And furthermore, my children will be taught to reasonably earn their achievements on their own and respect the decisions of their father and mother, and absolutely will not be spoiled brats either. I am very attracted to redheads, blondes, brunettes, Caucasians, Latinas, Asians, African Americans, Pacific Islanders, etc. Pretty much any woman that meets my physical requirements. I'm not attracted at all to even slightly fat women, no matter how much inner beauty you think you may possess. Hope to meet you soon, your prince. Yeah.
That was rough.
That was rough to read, right?
Yeah.
But for the women out there listening, that's how that comes across. I mean,
it really is. And the thing is, though, that we were talking about, and he mentions it in the book, is that for women to talk like that,
it's totally normalized.
Is socially acceptable.
Yep.
And for a man to talk in the exact same way, women went out of their way to like his profile just so they could contact him and chastise him about his profile.
Yep.
And no, men don't do that to women like that. You know what they do? Ignore.
Yep. Well, we didn't ignore them. We smashed that heart button because we never even read the profile.
Well, that's, a lot of guys probably do that.
Yep.
When I used Tinder, I didn't do that. But, yeah, I mean...
noob.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah, so the rational male, ladies, if you want a good insight into male psychology, like real male psychology, that is not what guys will tell you. Because we will tell you, as a whole, guys will tell you whatever they think it's going to take to get laid. It's the way we work.
Tell her everything she wants to hear.
Yep. Yep.
It's a pretty popular tactic.
Yep. And that's boring.
Yeah, I don't personally do that, which is
I don't either.
Why I don't have amazing success with women at this point. I'm pretty blunt. I say how I see things, and pretty much people think I'm a crazy fucker for my opinions. So it makes things difficult.
You do a lot more research than the average person, and you deal with a lot of topics that most people won't, without borderline on the conspiracy theorist, which is a really fine line. That's like a razor edge.
It is. It's difficult because I definitely do delve into a lot of those topics, and but I do try to keep my feet on the ground with it.
Yep.
And I do try to check myself sometimes, because I have in the past gotten into maybe a little bit of a paranoid delusional mindset, where I'm seeing things, and thinking they're connected when maybe they're not as connected as I thought, or maybe they're not connected,
Yep. So it's like anything else, though. If you're only seeing a certain data set, it's hard not to get into that mindset.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. So.
Oh, and ladies, big red flag. If you're talking crap about your ex, nope.
Oh yeah.
That's a big red flag for guys. Like, leave it be. Don't talk shit about your ex.
Yeah.
Because how would you like it if he was doing that?
Yeah. Posting on social media is bad too, and you know, I have to admit I have made a couple of comments, but they were very anonymous. But you know, I've done it before.
Well, we're all guilty of it.
Yeah. But in general, it's not really a good plan.
Yeah, it's not a good habit. It's not a good habit to talk bad about anyone, really.
No, I mean, you know, that's one of the things. If I'm getting to know somebody and they're constantly talking shit about other people, I know that when we're not together, they're probably doing the same thing about me. And, you know, it's just not a good habit to get into.
Nope.
And it is kind of a habit a lot of times. You know, it's one of those things you can definitely correct. You know, you can definitely stop doing it.
Yep. But I think part of that is it's fun to gossip because, again, that's like that dopamine hit in your brain. So people fall into that trap where they're like, oh, I have secrets. I'm going to tell this person.
It has a
secrets
function
anymore.
Too. Like gossip has a little bit of a function too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's necessary to a degree. Like, you know, if there's someone in the community that's dangerous, you know, and that serves a protective function for people to understand that that person is that way.
Yep.
And especially if there's someone who is able to put on a mask and they're, you know, like maybe a psychopath or something like that, because they are around.
Yep.
You know.
But at the end of the day, I think most people are going to pick up on that psychopathic behavior. So
yeah, I think, you know,
at least I would hope.
Unfortunately, I think it's one of those things that requires some practice.
That's true.
I have been duped many times, and word to the wise, it usually happens when you're in a vulnerable place, when you need help. That's when people like that will prey on you, is when you need them, when you're needy. And that's when I was taken advantage of the several times that I have been, and certainly have learned how to identify the red flags. And you know, when you're in a better place, you don't tend to attract people like that. So yeah.
Well, Joe,
any finishing thoughts?
I think we've covered a lot of stuff. There's a lot more stuff we can cover, but yeah, it's good. Yeah. This was definitely good. This is my first time talking with you on video like this, so.
No, it's good. Dan and I have had I don't know, a lot of discussions like this. We spent a lot of time talking, and you know, it's been good. It's been enlightening for me, certainly. And Dan's got a lot of knowledge, and he's very good with numbers and statistics. And I like hearing those perspectives because those aren't always things that I look at.
Right.
You know, so it's good. It's good to have that data. You know.
Well, and it's hard because it takes time to go look up that data, and you have to even know where to look. So, census.gov, really good website to start with. You can get a lot of data from there.
About what in particular?
Oh, pretty much everything. When it comes to, I don't know, but if you're looking at, for example, how many people are graduating college from different genders and race, it's all out there.
Okay.
If you're looking at the average number of children that people have in the U.S., it's out there. If you're looking at median income, fun fact, and then I'll get off this tangent. So the other day I was thinking about, so at least here in Florida, at St. Pete, Florida, housing is very expensive. And I was looking at it hit me. I was like, I wonder what the median cost of a home was back in 1950 and I don't know why I chose 1950. It just seemed like a nice round number. And the median income was. So I looked it up, and the median, I forget the actual numbers, but basically what it boiled down to is the median income was 40.4% of the median cost of a house. The median cost of a house in the U.S. today is $320,000. So that means that median income, because you got to remember back in 1950, like it or not, those were usually single income households because women weren't really allowed to work, which was a travesty, but it's a different topic.
Yeah.
So the median household income today would have to be about just over $129,000 a year. The median income in the U.S. today is about $39,000 a year. So that gives you, and I chose housing because that gets rid of inflation, that gets rid of everything, and that is a basic need. Housing is a basic need.
Right.
So that really puts things in perspective. Or the median price of a house would have to go up. I think it was like $96,000.
Right.
So
To be equivalent, right?
yep, and just that alone, like there's a problem here, and
Oh,
how
yeah.
do we fix it? But
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
that's a huge discussion into just the foundation of the system, in terms of fractional reserve banking and user lending.
Oh, yeah.
and that whole structure with the central banks.
Which is not conspiracy. You can look it up. It's all real, guys. It's not
That's
conspiracy.
exactly right. So Dan just mentioned, you don't get into the conspiracy theories, and it's like, well, some people would say that I do, but that's because they don't actually go read facts,
Yep.
like the declassified CIA documents, like
Yep.
the information on central banks, right? This is not a conspiracy. It's right in front of you.
Yep. Now, whether or not it's purposeful, because I think that's where the conspiracy theory comes in, is that, well, people have done this on purpose. That is arguable. But at the end of the day, the end result is the same.
Right.
So that's the problem, is that whether people did it on purpose or not, the end result is that we're all screwed. So,
And from my point of view, the solution that I try to present most frequently is that we all need to take personal responsibility.
yep.
And we all need to do our part. We all need to do something about this. My way of doing something is by making videos, by trying to educate people, by asking questions, by getting different perspectives, like from people like Dan, from others that I've had on the channel, providing sources and information. Right? What do you mean? Same here. What?
Same here, as far as getting information, like, talking to other people in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. So yeah, I mean that's my, that's what I try to do, and I'm doing the best I can. But I think each of us needs to make our own effort, in that regard.
If nothing else, try to make the world a better place, whether or not that's volunteer work or even picking up trash off the street in a park, like anything that's making the world a better place, that's contributing to humanity.
So there's an expression that goes, wisdom is planting trees under whose shade you will never sit under, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Basically, it means planting trees knowing that it's for the future generation. This is going to provide the future generation with something, right? This is going to provide our children with something. I realize you don't want to have children, but,
Yep.
I think that it's still important to look after.
Well, because I know myself. I
Young
would be a
ones.
horrible father. So, and I work too much. So,
Well, on that note, you want to call it a night here?
yeah, man.
All right. Well,
This
thanks
is
for
fun.
coming on the channel.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
Agreed. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
And
We should do it again.
yeah, hopefully we will get a chance to do this again. And thank you all if you've made it this far in the video. I think it's probably about 2 hours.
That's impressive.
But yeah, I know some of you probably will make it to the end. So appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below and click the icon to your left to subscribe. New content every week about spirituality and addiction from myself, Joe Fortin. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.